Hey everybody, our Oscar countdown continues, and so does our sweepstakes. Remember to fill out a ballot predicting this year's Oscar winners before Sunday, March 15th. Whoever sends in the ballot with the most accurate predictions will take the reins of our podcast for a week and determine a matchup we have to cover here on Hard Ticket. Of course, if you win and you'd also like to hop on the show, the more the merrier. Send in your ballots to hardticketpodcast@gmail.com. I think Letterboxd has already released a neat little sheet for you to download and fill out. So don't miss your chance to hop on our show and steer the conversation. Hard Ticket starts now.
It's a hard ticket at the movies.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Hard Ticket, the show where we go to the movies expecting a double feature, only to find that both movies are playing at the exact same time. So now we have a hard ticket to choose between the two. I'm Jeff Bogus.
And I'm Tristan Moore.
And we are on episode 2 of our countdown to the Oscars. 2 out of 3.
2 out of 3. Yeah, and then we have one that's coming after the Oscars.
Yeah, hedging our bets.
Yeah, we really are on that one.
But we're getting way ahead of ourselves. Today, we are talking about 2 movies that came out within the past 2 years. So one Oscar contender for 2026, and then one that was also an Oscar contender in 2025.
Yeah, really 2 years. I mean, it's really just like, what, 13, 14 months?
Yeah, because it came out
at the end of 2024.
Yeah. So they're pretty fresh, and well, keep saying this one did and this one. Let's introduce these movies so we don't have to talk around them. Actually,
yes.
Tristan, kick us off with option number A.
Option number A, 2024's Nosferatu, directed by Robert Eggers. Eggers, famous for the Vavitch. that was his most famous.
What'd you call me?
The Vavitch. You know it. A New England folktale.
Right.
He also did The Lighthouse, which was his biggest movie. Right?
I think so. Yeah.
And then he did The Northman a couple years ago,
right,
which nobody saw, but it was actually really good.
It was really good.
Nosferatu is basically a remake of the 1922 silent film, directed by F.W. Murnau. Nosferatu, famous for the one SpongeBob episode where he's turning on and off the lights.
Right. It's good to have a generational, entry point there.
Yes.
I think Eggers even acknowledged that. He was like, thanks, SpongeBob, for keeping people informed of Nosferatu.
Yeah. Eggers and SpongeBob, they go together like peanut butter and jelly. It stars Lily Rose Depp, daughter of esteemed actor Johnny Depp.
Esteemed, yes. Uncontroversial.
Unimpeachable. Yeah. Nicholas Hoult, Bill Skarsgård. This is our second Skarsgård, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we got Aaron Taylor Johnson, Willem Dafoe, some other folk. Ralph Ineson, I think, is notable because we're going to be talking about him in just a second.
Right, yeah.
Basically, it follows Nicholas Holt's character. He goes to Transylvania,
yes,
to get in contact with Count Orlok
to sell him some real estate.
This is a real estate story. Basically, he goes to Count Orlok and says, here's this house that's like in Visburg, which I think is in Germany.
Not that burg.
Not that burg.
Yeah, I had to get that in there.
Yeah, you've already made that joke. And basically invites this Nosferatu, this demon, this vampire into Visburg, which brings on a plague. But really what he's drawn to is not the land, not the real estate, not the incredible mortgage rates. It's Lily Rose Depp, who has sort of invited him into her.
They have a history.
They have a thing going on, yeah. So that's Nosferatu. Came out at the end of 2024. Great Christmas flick.
On Christmas Day, wide release.
I saw it. Well, it probably came out, I guess, New Year's Eve. I probably saw it then.
Right, not on Christmas.
Not exactly on Christmas, but yeah, it gets your spirits up.
It's also Eggers' most profitable movie by a long shot, I think.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Well, after The Northman bombed, I'm surprised he even got $50 million to make Nosferatu,
Yeah.
but it made over 180 million at the box office.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Even he was like, whoa. So now he got like a 3-picture deal after that. He's making the werewolf with a W. Well, I guess with a U after the W.
Yeah.
He has a type and he's sticking to it.
Yeah. His type used to be Anya Taylor-Joy, and now it's Lily Rose Depp.
Is she in the werewolf?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
Are you trying to like pronounce it funny?
Werewolf.
Werewolf.
So it's whatever. Anyway, so we are putting Nosferatu up against option number B, Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein.
Nice.
Guillermo has been trying to make this movie for somewhere between 20 and 30 years, I think.
Why?
Well, if you think about it, you look at his filmography,
Okay.
Finding the Beauty and Monstrous Men. It's a match made in heaven.
Well, yeah, he did The Shape of Water, which has like the lady who likes like the fish man.
Right, the fish man. Yeah. Oh, we'll get into that anyway.
All right.
But yeah, Del Toro, he's been trying to make this movie for forever, and he finally got to make it. Netflix shelled out $120 million and said, make whatever you want. So he made Frankenstein. It stars Oscar Isaac as Victor Frankenstein, the titular Frankenstein, not the creature. The creature is played by Jacob Elordi. So this is our second Jacob Elordi movie as well.
Yeah, in a couple weeks.
Yeah, it's true. We're visiting him really quick, and his tallness does come back into play here. It always has to come into play. Mia Goth plays Elizabeth Harlander, and Christoph Waltz rounds out the cast as Henrik Harlander, her dad, who bankrolls Frankenstein's operation to reanimate a corpse. You guys know Frankenstein. This story has been told over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So basically, Victor, he wants to conquer death. He had a bad childhood. Daddy didn't love him enough. Mom died.
Well, his dad was Charles Dance, so he was always set up to fail.
It's true, yeah. Although his brother, William Frankenstein, had a nice upbringing and turned out nice.
Because he was blonde and had blue eyes.
Right, yeah. He could start from scratch with his younger brother.
He was fairer.
Right.
I think that's what they say in the movie.
Yeah. So this movie came out at the end of 2025. It had a limited release in October. You could not find this thing anywhere, though, because Netflix likes to hold these things close to the chest.
Yeah.
I found it, though.
Oh.
I got to see it in theaters
You
with
did?
my girlfriend. Yeah.
Where at?
In Hancock, Maryland, I got to see it.
Oh, okay.
So that was great. My girlfriend loved it. She's a huge Mary Shelley fan, huge Frankenstein fan. For Christmas, I got her like the art book from behind the scenes of Del Toro's Frankenstein. It's like her new favorite movie. So
Sweet.
she loves it. Her hard ticket goes to Frankenstein.
Okay.
But she also really loves Nosferatu as well.
All right.
Yeah. So this is Nosferankenstein. Now it's time for the log lines, Tristan.
Yes, I have a log line. I have to get a little theatrical for this one. It's alive!
Wow, who would have guessed?
Or is it? The monster was inside of you this whole time. Or was it? Hey, shouldn't this episode be called Nosferankenstein's Monster? And that's my log line.
Man, yeah, you're doing something else with these.
I am. I'm doing it sort of loosey-goosey. It's sort of called an impressionistic log line.
You get everything you need from it.
Yeah, it's sort of like I'm writing log lines for like hippies who come up to movies who are like, "What's this movie about?" And they kind of get like my like little log line. They're like, "Okay, I kind of dig the vibe of it," but they're like, "This tells me nothing."
It seems like it was a little more Frankenstein heavy than Nosferatu heavy.
But the monster thing, does it come from within or without? That's from Nosferatu.
It's kind of both, I guess.
Listen, Jeff, what's your log line? Let's hear it.
Okay, here we go. Two auteurs with similar taste in subject material, yet completely different styles, tackle their passion projects through adaptations of a piece of classic Gothic literature, heavily featuring a reanimated corpse.
Okay, Wikipedia.
Would you like to know anything else?
What do you mean they have different styles? They're so similar. These movies are so similar.
Yeah, you're right. They are kind of similar. I mean, they have to be somewhat similar for us to be pairing them together.
Yeah,
on this podcast.
They do not look similar though at all.
Why pair these then? Why are we pairing these?
Well, I think part of it comes down to what you're saying is that they are modern retellings of classic monsters. I mean, what are the Dracula and Frankenstein are 1800s literature, became famous primarily like in cinematic form through the Universal monster movies of like the 1930s, which if you haven't seen those classic Universal monster movies, that's like the baseline understanding of all these monsters. And we're going to get into that later in the episode.
Oh, absolutely.
There's talk about monstrosity and the monstrous in both these films. And we're kind of going through maybe a period of monstrosity in the zeitgeist. We want to talk about it for some reason.
Yeah.
Jeff, what other reasons will we talk about these two
What
movies?
other reasons will we talk about these? Well, we're in the age of auteurism right now.
Okay.
Everybody kind of associates filmmakers' names with the films that they put them on.
Okay.
Del Toro is a household name.
Yeah.
Robert Eggers is an indie darling and a household name for people with, I think, above just a baseline appreciation for film, probably.
Yeah.
Everybody knows The Lighthouse. Yeah, plenty of people saw The Lighthouse. Now, I didn't say they liked it, and nobody saw The Northman. But,
Yeah.
I mean, Eggers has been trying to make Nosferatu. It was supposed to be his second film after The Witch, or The Vavitch, as you so eloquently.
A New England folktale.
But these are the stories that these two guys have been trying to tell. So these guys who have like,
but these are stories that have already been told.
they are stories that are. It's like you meet a lot of people in theater or actors. Everybody wants to play Lady Macbeth. Everybody wants to get their hands on that part, and this is kind of like that. Like, I really do think the stories that Del Toro has been telling for most of his career have just been like skirting around the Frankenstein narrative. It's like the original kind of like man is the real monster kind of story.
Yeah.
And then you've got Eggers, who's like, period drama guy. Everybody talks in the dialect of the time. He started off doing really naturalistic movies, like The Witch, I think only had natural light. The Lighthouse has a clear, I think it's in an even narrower aspect ratio than 3:4. It's like 1:1 or something like that. It's square, It's film.
Yeah.
It's all on film, black and white film. So, these guys are in it for the art, truly.
Both these movies are insanely long. They're sort of like epics, like in a way.
In a way, yeah, they're epics, but they don't have like a laundry list of cast,
No. You're kind of keeping tight knit with the cast. They're not like Odysseys or anything like that. They're not going to Mordor or anything. But there is a sort of they're very elaborate in a lot of ways. Probably because they're based off of source material that it's a book, and movies I feel like always have to cut down on books, almost always, unless you're adapting a very short book. But if you look back at like 1922's Nosferatu, what is it, like 90, 100 minutes, something like that? It's like an hour shorter.
Well, film was expensive.
Well, true. Yeah. There's also a little bit more efficient storytelling, I think, going on in that film. Whereas Frankenstein, if you look back at the like Universal monster movie, or even the one that was made in like 1911, it's like 16 minutes. I mean, it's you can tell these stories on a shorter scale.
Yeah.
Del Toro, I think, is like a director who really revels in excess, not necessarily in a bad way. He kind of reminds me of Baz Luhrmann in a lot of ways.
Really?
I kind of get like a little bit of like a Luhrmann. He's more controlled than Luhrmann, but he does kind of go all out. He does like the splendor of things, the gothicness, Crimson Peak, right? Crimson Peak is like a movie that is like resplendent. Like you watch this movie and it's like the colors jumping out at you. It's kind of garish in a way.
Sure, yeah.
Or garish if you prefer. Whereas Eggers you're right. I think he's a more...
Also Gothic, though. I mean, like you can apply that word to both of these guys.
Yeah, it is and that's something too. It's like, where is Gothic kind of spun into like these two different lanes? You're like a minimalist Gothic, or you're like a
Hot Topic Gothic.
Hot Topic Gothic, yeah. Like what? I don't understand where that comes from necessarily, but Eggers, yeah, the Vavitch. I'm gonna keep calling it the Vavitch. Is like so. You're just like in a field, in like a tiny house with like a very small cast of characters. The Lighthouse is just these two guys in a lighthouse, like very small kept up films. I think Nosferatu kind of has more in common with like the Northman in the way that it sort of unravels as it goes along.
Yeah, it does. And like from the way that it's so composed as well. Like
True.
The Vavitch and The Lighthouse are a little rougher around the edges. And
yes,
they're all the better for it, I think.
so, yeah.
With the Northman, you got a studio budget and you got a lot of studio notes too. I mean, the studio meddled in that one. But then with Nosferatu, I think he got a lot more freedom with the inflated budget, and he got to kind of compose it a little bit more, kind of in the style of what I feel like he's trying to grapple a lot of influence filmically that has spun off from the time periods in which these characters got famous. But we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. Let's kick things off with our first sort of talking point.
I am the child of a charnel house. Wreckage. Assembled from refuse and the discarded dead. A monster.
You are not of humankind.
You are a villain to speak, sir.
I am an appetite. Nothing more.
Nosferatu, if you prefer the long A. Nosferatu is like the main character Ellen is really wrestling with this idea of like, is this evil? Did I invite this in, or is this something that's springing from within me? Right?
Yes.
Like, is Nosferatu coming to Visburg to go back to the source of his power, or is he possessing her? Like, is it sort of a demonic possession? And so that film really wrestles with, where does the monstrous come from? In a similar way to Frankenstein, which, you know, there's a whole first part to Victor's story, which talks about his childhood, his father, Charles Dance, who like was very tough with him and, you know, beat him and all this stuff. He had high expectations for him. But when it came down to it, when his wife got pregnant and he had to choose between her or the baby she was going to give birth to, he picked the baby. And so he deprived Victor of his mother. So in a way, it's like, oh, Victor is sort of made to be a monster. That's sort of the impression you get. But then he literally makes a human being who is a, you know, monstrous. He makes this human being. He mistreats it. He is horrible toward it. But at the end of the day, the monster himself is more of a human being than Victor. There's a resilience there, I think you might say, where he was not made into a monster despite his monstrous upbringing. And so there's sort of a nature versus nurture thing going on here too. But I feel like that's a topic worth discussing, because I feel like both these films are really, that's kind of like what they're getting at. How are monsters made?
How are monsters made? Yeah. And it is, Frankenstein presents the dichotomy between, you know, Victor and his creature, which, you know, they both did not have great upbringings, although the creature's is a little bit more unorthodox. But
yeah,
I quoted this kind of meme earlier. I'm gonna bring it up again because have you seen this meme? It's Guillermo del Toro understands that women long for the beauty buried inside the monstrous.
I have seen. Isn't like that? That's a Twitter post, right?
It's a Twitter post. There's a picture of The Shape of Water and of Frankenstein.
Okay,
where it's Elizabeth and the creature and Sally Hawkins' character and the fish monster. And somebody responded and they said they will never make movies about beautiful men longing for the beauty buried inside monstrous women, by the way, which, I mean, that's true, but so great clapback. But I think that the problem is the prompt that they're responding to. It's like Guillermo del Toro understands that women long for the beauty buried inside the monstrous. I mean, sure, you can interpret it that way, but I think what del Toro is getting at is like men are usually better off when they have a feminine influence in their life, or, you know, like men in that traditional role of a man and women in that traditional role of a woman. There's this idea that they balance each other. It's emotional intelligence that men do not possess, right? So Victor Frankenstein, he has his mother, and she is the light of his life. And when she's gone, he becomes cold, and he becomes more like his father. There's even a scene where he like picks up the same. Well, yeah, he hits the monster. I mean, he's falling into the same trappings as his father.
Right.
Now, does Eggers, is he the one who says, actually, we're making a movie longing for the beauty inside a monstrous woman who is possessed by a monster? She's not a monstrous woman, but she's possessed. But
I think there's a key difference though, and spoilers, is that Ellen dies at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Right. It's like you may sort of look at it that way, where we're maybe a sort of longing. You know, Nicholas Hoult certainly is trying to long for her. He's having trouble doing that. And the influence is because of Nosferatu himself. But the end of the movie is she is not able to conquer the monstrous within her without giving her life to it.
Yeah. Did you know Eggers cited Wuthering Heights as an influence on this film? Did you know that?
I did not. But actually, now that you say that, it kind of makes sense. I'm reading through Wuthering Heights right now because I just saw the movie. And
the movie in quotes, literally in quotes.
Literally in quotes, yeah. That is another Jacob Elordi reference.
It is, yeah. But then you have the Heathcliff character. He's that, he's that bastard. Apparently, Count Orlok in Eggers' adaptation is modeled off of Heathcliff, and he claims that Ellen does, there is a part of her that is drawn to Count Orlok.
Sure.
She manifested the guy. She reached out. The movie starts with a prayer. She prays for companionship. It's answered by the devil. It's answered by Orlok, who makes a covenant with her and enters her life. So it's there's the bad boy thing right there, which we'll get into that and the whole legacy of vampires and
that's true. And maybe we should talk a little bit about it now, because Count Dracula, when you think about him, he's this guy, you think of Bela Lugosi and the suave cape and the hair, and he has all this charm, and that's the vampire. It's seductive. Yeah. You look at Count Orlok or Nosferatu, and he's this creepy goblin looking guy with really long fingers, and in this one he's got a gross mustache. It's that thing. He's got food buried in that thing.
Well, Eggers wanted Orlok to have been handsome in his life.
Sure.
That's kind of what he was going for.
He was tall for sure.
Right. But he also wants you to realize that he is literally a decomposing corpse underneath his coat and all the things that he's hiding in the light when he's talking to people. And then you look at Jacob Elordi's Frankenstein, who's hot as dude. It's Jacob Elordi.
You think the Frankenstein is hot?
I'm not the only one who thinks that.
Oh, I know. I'm just asking you,
All I'm saying is that Frankenstein himself is going through the battlefields and he's tall specimens, long limbs.
Hot guys.
I feel like that's kind of how, when Andrew Garfield backed out at the last minute, Del Toro was get anyone, tall specimen, long limbs. There's a similar thing there.
That's so funny.
Right. Yeah. These monsters are hot. The hotness comes from how they look, right? That comes from the exterior.
Yeah. Well, you have to dig to get the hotness out of Nosferatu, right? Because I guess it's easy to imagine that Count Orlok, he's this old aristocracy who was good looking in his, his prime, and maybe he was noble. He was a leader, a ruler. He's not like men today, maybe there's a part of Lily Rose Depp in yearning for this connection, for some sort of meaning, some sort of longing. She maybe is romanticizing this sort of past.
The animalistic,
yeah. The men of yesteryear. Because, you look at Nicholas Hoult, he's a good looking guy, but he is just he's a bookkeeper, basically.
He's been pushed around by his boss who keeps promising him a promotion.
Yeah,
too.
Exactly. There's a lot of economic anxiety that's at the root of Nosferatu, and a lot of that anxiety sort of manifesting as sexual impotence and that sort of thing. So that's another thing Lily Rose Depp is longing for, to be desired.
Yeah.
And so in the process, she desires literally the most undesirable looking creature you could ever imagine. Literally brings a pestilence upon the land that when he touches shore, can you get more monstrous than that? But but still it is drawn toward her, and she draws it near her. I think there's something there. You look at Frankenstein, Elordi, you think he's hot, and maybe he is, He sort of looks it's funny, it's the modern Prometheus, and he literally, there's that shot of him where he washes up on shore after the castle explodes.
Yeah.
And he stands up in a tide pool, and he literally looks like one of the guys from Prometheus.
Yeah. And then that line that Christoph Waltz says earlier when he says, "Okay, Prometheus, are you going to burn your hands before delivering your fire?"
That's a pretty good Christoph Waltz. That's kind of how he sounds in this movie.
I didn't even mean to do a Christoph Waltz impression.
No, okay, Prometheus. That's kind of how he sounds in this. Yeah. I couldn't stop laughing every time he spoke because I was just thinking of Colonel Hans Landa or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's good. Okay, Prometheus. Okay, the modern Prometheus. I'll see what you're doing here.
Yeah, so why do you think the monster turns out differently than Frankenstein? So the monster has inherent goodness, right? Or the monster is confused about the world. He's scared about the world. When he learns he's hiding in the gear room of a cabin
Yeah.
and he is drawn to kindness.
Yes.
So where Victor found kindness as a child, it was lost, and then he spent the rest of his childhood in the shadow of his father, who favored his brother. So he has a longer exposure, I guess, to a more critical world.
Well, yeah, I think it's important not to just sort of like underline that Victor's father deprived him of a mother, but also that Victor's father himself was not fatherly.
Yeah.
You know, he was like his boss. He was like his mentor, you know?
Yeah.
And you look at
Yet he was fatherly to his brother.
yes, yeah, exactly. And his brother turned out, you know, pretty good.
Pretty good.
Pretty
Yeah.
good. I mean, he died, but
I mean, it doesn't seem like his wife wants to be with him, but
that's true. And,
Yeah.
and maybe that has something to do with him not having a mother. Yeah, basically, if you don't have a mother or father, you're damaged goods. And no, you look at the monster, and he obviously has Victor as his father at first, who he loves. The only word on his lips is Victor. Victor, you know, he's like entranced by his father.
Right.
It's his god in a way. That's his, you know, creator. And then his creator turns vindictive and starts hurting him. And then he sees Mia Goth's character, Elizabeth, and there's sort of a romantic thing there, but there's also like a motherly, I think, touch going on there as well. Sort of looking to her as that feminine figure that you're talking about. He finds his masculine figure in the blind man who is living in the cabin in the woods.
sure, yeah.
He's grandfatherly, you know, and he teaches him about kindness. He teaches him to read and all this stuff. I mean, that's where he is able to become more of a fully fleshed out human being.
Yeah, and it's important to note, too, that his father was attempting to mold him into something very specific. He wanted him to be a great doctor. And Victor becomes a great doctor, and he does that out of spite, basically. He's like, I'm going to be a better doctor than you, and I'm going to conquer death.
Yes.
Now, the monster is not like the fact that it exists was as far as Victor thought. He has no plans for it.
That's true.
It is in the purest form. It is a blank slate. When it's cast out into the world, it learns kindness because it observes kindness, and it barely remembers like its youth. You know, when Victor was hitting it and Elizabeth was showing it. I mean, you clearly see that it leaves an impression on the creature.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not trying to be molded into anything. It just becomes what it. You know, it's like the realist desires. It is led to what it becomes.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
It is an interesting relationship with nature too, where it like witnesses the wolves killing the sheep.
Right.
And he's like, some part of me realized that maybe
the wolves don't hate the sheep.
they don't hate them. Yeah, there's no
Right.
hatred there. It's just natural processes, which is kind of interesting because I think Victor's dad has a line to him where he's like talking about like the different weights in women and men and their hearts. He's like, why might this be? Is it because of sentiment? And he's like, no, it's because of body mass or whatever. He's like, exactly. Like there is no spiritual content in tissue, and which is an interesting line. And then afterward, Victor gets something wrong, and instead of beating his, I don't know what he used to be. Oh, his hands.
Right.
He's like, no, we need your hands.
But your face is vanity.
But your face is vanity.
Yeah.
And it's like he does ascribe this sort of like spiritual content to different parts of Victor, which he does segment in the same way that Victor assembles a man from segmented parts. Like
Right.
he is the way he's looking at tissue as clay, as something to be molded and that sort of thing. And there's sort of an interesting parallel with the way that the monster, you know, quote unquote, the monster Jacob Elordi, the monstrous Jacob Elordi, is looking at nature, and he's not seeing sort of a spiritual component to this push and pull between nature and prey. He's just sort of seeing it as it is, as material, as nature. Isn't that interesting, though, that Victor's dad is like, no, it's all nature. It's all material. It's just raw matter. But at the end of the day, he can't let go of that actual thought that your face is vanity. Your hands are who you are going to be. It's like he can't let, it's a contradiction, I feel like, in that character, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think it's like has something to do with finding that line between, you know, accepting things for how they are versus ascribing meaning where it's like useful.
Or trying to ascribe it to something else, too. Trying to control something. I mean, we could, if we wanted to, have another conversation about God.
Yeah.
Because there is a major God complex happening in Frankenstein. And I do think Frankenstein is doing something different with God that Del Toro doesn't usually do, which is like almost describing that it's okay to believe in him. Because most of the time, the Christians are villains in a Del Toro work, but we're not having this conversation. We've talked about God too much.
Well,
already.
can I just say real quick? That when Frankenstein's monster is up on his
T-posing.
he's T-posing, but then his arms goes just slightly above T-posing, so he's no longer like on a cross.
He's bigger than Jesus.
But he also has like a crown, like a silver crown of spikes above him, which are to direct lightning into his body.
Right.
But it looks like the crown of thorns. At one point, Jacob Elordi has a stab mark on his right side, like in his ribs, mirroring Jesus on the cross.
Yeah.
So yeah, you could definitely get into like the messianic thing that's going into Frankenstein, and we probably shouldn't skirt around it completely. But I understand if you want to move on to the next topic, because we've gone to church the past couple.
We
weeks.
have. The last thing I'll say is like I almost second guess myself when the monster starts telling his story and he says, "I called your name and understood I was alone." And I was like, "Oh, maybe we are alone." And just like that, we're going to abandon this topic and move on to our next one.
Professor, my dreams grow darker. Does evil come from within us or from beyond?
I fear you, Victor. No. I always have. Every ounce of madness and destruction. The very conflagration that devoured everything. It all came from you. You are the monster.
The question I want to ask you is a question of subtext versus text. One of the biggest criticisms I've seen directed towards Frankenstein, and the biggest criticism I have towards Frankenstein, is one specific line that points to a larger problem in the whole. But when William calls his brother Victor the monster, you were the monster, Victor.
Right.
And of course, this is a Netflix movie, feels like a studio note. I literally got into an argument with my girlfriend about the inclusion of that line. Like, she's like, it's, people don't know what Frankenstein is supposed to mean anymore. It's been like destroyed in the zeitgeist and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't mean you got to spoon feed your audience like that. But I want to apply this to Nosferatu as well, because in Nosferatu, before I went back and rewatched it for this episode, I was thinking about like what it means and like the conversation it's having about science and mental health versus the occult and the supernatural. And I was like, how metaphorical is this movie? And then I watch it, and there's literally a scene among Ralph Innes, Willem Dafoe, and Aaron Taylor-Johnson's characters where they're talking about like Ralph Innes has warily recommended Willem Dafoe for the job because he's like into the occult now, and he's like, doesn't really live in the realm of science anymore. And they investigate Lily Rose Depp's Ellen, and Willem Dafoe's like, it's a demon. It's an actual demon. And Ralph Ineson to Aaron Taylor-Johnson, he's like, what the doctor means to say is that like there is a demonic sort of disease that has taken over. And Willem Dafoe's like, it's literally a demon. I'm not speaking metaphorically.
Right.
And then I think back to the opening text of Mark Twain's Huckleberry Finn that says, anybody who tries to interpret this novel as anything more than what it is will be shot on sight. Like that opening text, like take it for what it is. But that was an invitation for people to be like, the river represents freedom and all that stuff.
Oh, sure.
So like, how much do these on the nose kind of lines, with Frankenstein, I think it's a little bit more egregious and there's more of a broader conversation happening in Nosferatu, but how much do they invite subtext beyond what they're saying literally in the script?
Well, here's part of the problem with lines like that. They don't invite conversation. They don't invite subtext. They invite conversation about subtext, which is what we're having right now. So we're sort of having like a conversation about what a story should be having a conversation about within its own text.
Okay.
So like, there's another meme. We're going to talk about memes. We're just talking about memes right now. There's another meme. It's a screenshot from American Psycho of Jared Leto turning around. It's the reaction of him like seeing Patrick Bateman with the axe about to cut him in half.
Yeah.
And he says, there's a quote. It says, "It was you, Patrick. You were the American Psycho."
Yeah.
He did not say that, obviously.
It's a great meme.
Yeah, no. And you could definitely imagine more egregious examples in Frankenstein. You could have him say, "It was you, Victor. you were Frankenstein, the modern Prometheus. You know, like,
yeah, you can't get much more on the nose.
you
than the
can't get
line.
much more on the nose. I think there's something to be said about the idea of like works being I say misinterpreted. Misinterpreted is like a really loaded phrase, I think, because it really depends. Because a lot of people are like, oh, the author's intent is the end all be all. And I'm, you know, sort of in the death of the author camp where I don't necessarily think you can look at the author, their life, their intentions or whatever, and sort of be like, okay, this is what they meant by what it is they're writing. But there's also a degree of like literacy that you expect from people when they read or watch something, that they're going to come away and not just make up something. They're like, oh, I love the part with the pink elephant that walked into Frankenstein's castle. And that really represented my love of pink elephant. You know, like it doesn't make sense. Like you have to have some degree of, your argument has to be cogent. It has to be based off of something. I do think that there is a media illiteracy streak that you can point to. I don't necessarily know if that's a new thing. I'm not educated enough to know that, but it was something that you and I like talked about, I think probably all the way back to our very first episode, talking about like Fight Club and the way people interpret Fight Club.
Yeah.
And it's like, is this movie causing more damage or what? Maybe someone needs to step out and say that Victor Frankenstein is acting monstrously. I tend to think of Victor Frankenstein as a little bit more complex than that. I think he's a little more morally gray than just a simple monstrous scientist.
What do you think the movie is missing?
What is the movie missing?
Del Toro's adaptation of Victor Frankenstein as a character. What is it doing differently? Because
Well,
you've actually read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Yeah, it is doing some stuff differently. And it has been, like, it's probably been 6 or 7 years. Ooh, do the meme. It's probably been 6 or 7 years since, sorry. My mind is all over the place right now. It's been a couple of years since I read the novel. I do know, Elizabeth doesn't marry, Victor's brother. And,
Her character is entirely different. They try to make, I mean, she was like a cousin, I think, of Victor.
Which is totally okay.
But Del Toro is like, well, we'll just make her the same actress as Victor's mom, and
Which
that'll
I love.
create some sort of, I like that.
I love
think
that, yeah. It's a good decision.
Yeah, and we'll have Victor drink milk throughout the whole movie.
Oh my God, yeah. Like Colonel Hans Landa. Is that his name, Landa?
Who?
You know the guy from Inglourious Bastards that Christoph Waltz plays?
Oh, I haven't seen that movie in a while. Like, since high school. Like
do
a
you,
long
do
while.
your Christoph Waltz impression again.
And Prometheus!
That's a bingo! Yeah, that it has him drinking milk because that's like a villainous thing to do, like Alex in Clockwork Orange.
I just think it's because he's a man baby. I mean, like, no, it's like
yeah, no, you're right. He is a man baby. Yeah, he's a dude who tries to subvert female autonomy, female capability. Like he tries to eliminate the feminine entirely to create life.
Right. Yeah.
Because he thinks he's God, and also because he's got weird sexual hangups, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Partly because he lost his mom in the movie, and partly because, Mia Goth is kind of with his brother and not with him. Yeah, basically he's like an incel in this movie, right?
Kind of. I mean, he's played by Oscar Isaac,
Yeah, he wants to he could
Sex in Frankenstein
He's a Volcel.
It's like,
sorry.
it's replaced by authenticity, by understanding. We have that scene where Victor approaches Elizabeth after she's interacted with the creature for the first time, or I think after a couple times, and he's like, if I didn't know better, if I could force myself to believe it, I would say you have an attraction towards that creature. And Elizabeth says, an understanding, not an attraction. I mean, they have a connection.
Yeah.
Where they both feel like kind of caged birds or societal outcasts in a way. And Victor is a societal outcast as well, but he's angry about it. He takes pride in it in a dangerous way.
Well, he kind of wants to be brought back in.
Right. He claims that he does, but like he wouldn't, like he would continue to be the same thing, that he just wants to be accepted, I guess.
I think he wants to like prove those guys wrong at like the academy or whatever.
Ralph Ineson.
Yeah. So this is our Ralph Ineson connection. He's in both movies. That's why we're comparing these two movies, because Ralph Ineson. But yeah, when he's like in that like trial and he's getting like claps and applause from the students and
Right.
some of the other people, but like the board who are like dressed in these like fancy like Benjamin Franklin wigs and everything, and they're like, this is witchcraft, this is against God and all that crap, and he's
Right.
just like, yeah, it is, and I'm gonna prove you all wrong when I walk in here with my 6'5" hulking hunk.
He's basically saying there is no God. I am God with my hunk.
With my hunk, yeah, me and my hunk, we're God, yeah. Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Oh my God, we were thinking the same thing. Oh, Prometheus. But I want to draw back again to Nosferatu, because the conversation Nosferatu is having between like what exists in the natural world and what is supernatural, like what is at play here. Ellen has that line where she's talking to Willem Dafoe. They meet for the first time and she's asking him, Doctor, like, does evil come from within or does it come from somewhere else? And basically, like, me being in this like grad program right now doing research, expanding science.
Oh,
I am a scientist.
you're a scientist?
I'm training to be a scientist, basically.
Okay.
And I'm learning about the difference between like the constructivist approach to research and the positivist approach to research. You know the difference?
Oh, are you asking me right now?
Yeah.
No.
The positivist approach to research basically says that there exist facts to be discovered,
Okay.
whereas the constructivist point of view says that we kind of only know what we have discovered, and even that we continue to challenge and disprove later. So to me, Nosferatu is having that conversation. It's basically saying, like, look at this time. I think it takes place in 1838. Look at this time where science is way behind where it is now. You're in 2026. And what we know is still not enough to explain like what is going on. And you have this conversation all the time. Like you don't hear words like hysteria anymore because they were invented to explain something that could not be explained by the tools that were available.
Okay.
Nosferatu is, I mean, it is like an externalization of all of these things. The way that Count Orlok possesses Ellen, she has seizures, she has fits of like immobility, like, and there are all of these things still exist in the practical world today. So you can put so many things onto Count Orlok as a character. He is the embodiment of death. He is the embodiment of depression. He is a sexual abuser. He is the plague. I mean, like, you put them all under this one creature. What is the monster that represents everything? This is him, the devil. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I don't know what to say to that. I'm like, what do you say to that? I have trouble with this movie a little bit though, because I think it's because I've seen the original and I watch it and I think, what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
Not because it's not exploring those ideas that you're laying out, but because it's sort of, I feel like it's just going in a roundabout way of exploring the ideas that were already done in its predecessor with some differences. There are some differences, obviously, but
forgive me if I'm wrong because I haven't seen the original Nosferatu, but the key difference I identify is that Count Orlok actually has a pre-existing relationship with the female hero, right?
In the new one, he does.
And in the original, he doesn't.
Yeah.
And to me,
he's drawn to her in the original because he sees like a picture of her from Nicholas Holt's character, basically Thomas. He sees that picture when he like visits the castle, and that's why he's like, "Oh, you got a little boo? Like, I'm gonna show up and do my Nosferatu thing to her." But in this one, there's like you start off with Lily Rose Depp before Thomas ever goes to Transylvania.
Mm-hmm.
She already has this connection to him. And he does incidentally see her picture at one point, but there's like that supernatural connection.
Yes.
That's already drawn them together.
And to me, that feels important to the way this remake positions itself apart from the original.
That is important because it definitely centers Ellen's character more than the predecessor, which kind of goes into what we were talking about earlier about Ellen confronting the monstrous and ultimately what that does to her and what she has to do to eliminate it, which is sacrifice herself.
Yes.
She is expected to sacrifice herself. It's interesting. Both these movies, Victor's mom is sacrificed
to
give birth to, William. And Mia Goth's character, Elizabeth, also dies. She takes a bullet for the monster. She sacrifices herself for the monster.
Yeah.
There's a lot of feminine sacrifice in these stories of monstrous men. What the hell? Why? Why is that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
Men being women being expected to die in order to correct the sins of men.
Well, in Nosferatu, Ellen is more of a prey. You know, she's more of a victim.
She is, yeah.
And she does sacrifice herself willingly to destroy Count Orlok.
Right, right.
But she has been plagued by him her whole life. And it's basically like, can you keep on living with this? Or are the people around you going to keep suffering and dying because of this evil that is not something you can control?
Right. And her mania manifests nowadays, if you saw it, it'd be there'd be a clinical diagnosis for it.
Right.
So if we are right to sort of watch Nosferatu and read it as a subtext about mental illness or whatever, then what does that say about a character like Ellen, that she is hurting all these people around her with her illness, but at the end of the day, the only way to take that burden off of people is for her to die.
Right, but I don't read it as a subtext or that it wants you to read it as a subtext.
Right.
Because of the line.
Because of the line from Willem Dafoe where he's like, I'm talking about a literal demon.
But even if he didn't say that, I feel like the movie, because this monster is so just overtly present, he is a character. He's not just a presence. He is active in the narrative. Eggers is basically saying, we talked in our Hard Ticket to Halloween about how we've come out the other end of trauma as the villain.
Right.
And now we're back to playing with these tropes in a way that's not trying to pick them apart, but to actually use them for the functions they were originally intended for. Now we have straight up monsters, and monsters embody things, and that's why they're scary. But they aren't the things necessarily. There are a lot of things in one.
Yeah.
And that's what Count Orlok is. He's not just one thing. He's not depression. He's not, I'll say it again. But
I think that's the struggle that I have with this movie and why, you kind of laid out all these things he could be, and why it was sort of baffled me or made me sit there and think, because it's he really could just be all of these things, or he could just be a monster, and you could read it that way. And
or both. Why not?
Or both, yeah. And honestly, it's for me, when I watch the movie, I think I'd rather just read him as just a simple monster. But then it's just a simple, a little diversion on a. When did I watch this Saturday? I just watched Nosferatu. It's just about a guy who's a monster, and then he dies when the sunlight hits him because he has an allergy to it or something. Then it's okay, what are we talking about here? We're just talking about. Are we talking about Huck Finn on the river, and there's nothing.
Right.
Nothing to read into it, right? I don't know. You sort of you have to take a story as it is, right? You have to take it, the text and everything as it is. The subtext, it's easy for me to go into English major mode and just watch something and be okay, this is all a cipher for something else, or it reflects a certain vibe or zeitgeist that's going on right now. It's easy for me to do that, or even to look at a meta text and be oh, it's saying something about itself or the genre, whatever. It's way harder for me to just sort of watch a movie and sort of take it as it is, even though that's really what you're supposed to be. That's what you're supposed to be doing in the beginning.
Yes.
Maybe that's why Nosferatu is a little more challenging. It's not that you can't read subtext into it, and I definitely do. There is the mental health stuff. There's the the science versus occult stuff going on in there. I was sort of reading it as maybe a loose sort of fascism kind of coming into a country and taking it over.
Oh, that's not what it's about at all.
Oh, right. No, exactly. Right. The way it sort of invades this town and becomes a pestilence. But then what does that say about a lady who has to give herself over to purge this plague?
Mm-hmm.
What does that say about society now, the way fascism is reckoned with and ultimately overcome?
Yeah.
It requires sacrifice, it requires sacrifice from people who we hold in high esteem and all this stuff. There's all sorts of ways to kind of look at it. But the thing is that it sort of resists interpretation a little bit and sort of becomes just its own sort of Gothic reimagining. It's black and white. I mean, this is a movie that is literally an adaptation of a silent black and white film,
yes.
And itself probably has less color in it than the actual original Nosferatu, because they would actually tint the film stock
Right,
and everything. Now, it's interesting, some of the light in this, like when there's an orange flame or blue sort of like moonlight, it does actually take on the look of
but for
those
the most
original
part,
films.
it's very cold. Like there's less color when the sun is directly beating down on the environment.
Yeah, it's very black and white. And in that way, it's almost just an experiential film. It's sort of just like what you see is what you get. The sound is really what is coming to the fore, because you got to talk about Nosferatu. You never hear what he sounds like in the 1922 film. And here, I think that's one of the things that stuck out to me the most when I watched this film originally was, wow, the sound design around this monster it just really gets to you. It gets under your skin. There's no necessarily any subtext to be read from that. It's just something you experience.
True. Yeah. And because it's almost like a blank slate of a film. You get to fill it in. Well, Eggers got to fill it in, and Eggers had been, like, he wrote a stage adaptation of this thing when he was younger. Like this is a film that he's been wanting to make for a long time. That's why it's so interesting to see what these two auteurs are doing with their passion projects, which is actually going to transition us into our third talking point.
Can you contain your fire, Prometheus? Or are you going to burn your hands before delivering it?
Curse?
Yes, cursed. This dear young creature is possessed of some spirit. Perhaps a demon.
I beg your pardon?
I assure you, Harding, the professor means this is hyperbole.
No, I mean a demon.
You jest.
The legacy that both of these characters and, all characters that resemble their likeness have taken on. There's a quote by Del Toro, and you might have read it because it's on the Wikipedia page for Frankenstein. When you're adapting a universal myth, the myth itself rises so far above the original material that any interpretation is equally faithful if done with sincerity, power, and personality. If you think in terms of fidelity to the canon, you would be completely paralyzed. That's sort of what he's getting at. And when I first watched Frankenstein, I had the idea that Del Toro was trying to recanonize Frankenstein in a similar way that, like, when we talked about Batman Begins, when Christopher Nolan recanonized Batman.
Right.
And then you kind of see the crux of Del Toro's quote in something like James Gunn's Superman, which feels like it has fidelity to the canon of Superman in a way that it's trying to overcorrect Zack Snyder's vision.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Now Del Toro, he's looking at Frankenstein. He's like, okay, it's alive. The Universal monster movie already took so many liberties from the source material. Now it's time to go back to the beginning and build this thing from the ground up with my Del Toro signature flair. And it is very much his signature flair. There's not a whole lot different from what he does with something like The Shape of Water.
Oh, it's basically like if you told me, okay, Guillermo del Toro is going to adapt Frankenstein.
Yeah.
This is the exact movie, I would imagine. It's same with Nosferatu and Robert Eggers.
Yeah.
Frankly.
Yeah. That makes sense to me. Then you look at Nosferatu and you look at what vampires have become. And vampires have had a weird history.
Vampires are sexy, dude.
Well, Twilight really, put a stake through the heart of the vampire mythos for a while. Whoa. And then Taika Waititi made What We Do in the Shadows, and it's like, now they're funny. They went from sexy to funny.
Yeah.
And Eggers is like, despite all of the sexual overtones of Nosferatu, he is making it as, like, there's a lot of nakedness. I've seen a lot of people who don't like this movie for prudish reasons specifically.
Yeah. Well, that's something, you look at, Taika Waititi's making vampires funny because we kind of live in a little bit of a prudish, it's weird. Porn is everywhere, but we're sort of prudish, especially like Gen Z, like our generation, having less sex than previous generations. They feel weird about sex scenes in movies. They're like, oh, it's unnecessary and stuff like that. So maybe, because we take sex a little bit less, or we're trying to take a little bit less seriously, we look at a vampire character like the ones in What We Do in the Shadows, and we're like, okay, they're not sexy, they're just funny.
Right.
You look at the Nosferatu character, again, not sexy, but very much about sex.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you just got to get over that prudishness because they're going for it in this movie in a really garish way. I think we can bring that word back a little bit here.
Yeah.
There's sort of a garishness to the sex in Nosferatu and the way that the colors and stuff, the production of Frankenstein sort of pop out. Where the original Nosferatu is very much working on implication because it came out in the 20s, This one is more just like, we're going to show it in all its ugliness.
Right. We can do this now, basically.
Yeah. All the flesh is gray and
the final shot of the movie. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Just a shriveled vampire corpse on top of a defiled woman.
Oh, yes.
Who was dead.
A woman who's dead. And also like, Lily Rose Depp, I think, she's an attractive person, but she like, it looks like she lost a lot of weight for the movie. Yeah. She looks like skin and bone. Like, I mean, like anything that could be construed as sexy is not like it is. Yeah. It has gone the opposite way in this film.
And now Frankenstein is sexy. They went the opposite ways.
Well, yeah, dude.
I think we were on a call the other night, and I was literally reading Jacob Elordi's Wikipedia page, and I was like, they call him Generation Z's sex symbol. Imagine being the sex symbol for the sexless generation.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. Jacob Elordi. Yeah, and I'll say, just watched Wuthering Heights. There's not a lot of sex in it, really. Not a lot.
Well, that wasn't supposed to be the point of it anyway, but...
Well, I know, but the way the marketing was, geez.
Oh, yeah.
You think it was going to be a softcore porn, but no, it's interesting. And that's I'm sure that's a tough mantle to be carrying. No, I'm just kidding. Oh, everybody loves me and I'm so tall and hot. Jacob Elordi. No, but seriously, there's something there about like being a sex symbol in a generation that is like, we love the monstrous. And that's like become like a thing that you see in a lot of, Del Toro has helped popularize it, but in a lot of like smut fic, in a lot of like smut and stuff.
Oh my God.
It's like, the love of the monstrous and of men who are rough around the edges. And I don't know, maybe there's a backlash to, I don't know what that would be. A backlash to the sexlessness of men today who are anxious and like to date AI girlfriends instead, and that sort of thing. There's something going on here right now that we're in the midst of in this conversation, which is part of why these two films I feel like are drawn together in conversation, because they're tackling it in two very different ways.
Yeah. Well, my girlfriend, she has a major hang up with the way that Frankenstein has been misconstrued to be, or Frankenstein's monster is a monster. Like that's just how it was osmosed through pop culture. A lot of the time people are like, oh, Frankenstein, monster. You dress up with him for Halloween, paint your skin green and put the bolts in your head and you're a monster. Like, but that's not the point of Frankenstein.
No.
But that's what has been misconstrued. And so now you have Del Toro, who's once again, I thought it was funny you compared him to Baz Luhrmann earlier, because I clocked during this movie, I'm like, there's not a single static shot in this movie.
Yeah.
Even when even when it's like you think it might be, the camera's always floating. It's always, and the Shape of Water was the same way.
The camera kind of moves at the beat of like a waltz, and there's always this sort of like waltzy sort of fantastical music kind of going on with it. And it's just very it's fluid and choreographed.
Does it work in its favor?
I think so, because it is sort of like this elaborate sprawling narrative, and as it unfurls, there's sort of elegance to it.
Because in our year in review, you said you thought Frankenstein was an ugly movie.
It is. I still stand by that. I think it's an ugly film. I do not like the color palette. To me, it looks like a Disney, like a live action remake, or looks like a Wicked or something like that. I just do not care for this sort of fake looking oversaturation of colors, which has become a hallmark of a lot of Del Toro's work. I'm thinking back to Crimson Peak, which is a film that I'm not particularly a fan of either. Yeah, I don't like the way this film looks. I don't.
I gotta say, man, I love the scenes in the tower, especially when they first get in the tower and there's like the warm sun coming in, and sometimes it's snowing through the ceiling, and there's this big window, and there's all this scientific surgical equipment lying around.
Sure.
And seeing this thing in a theater too, I mean, I hate to be that guy, but it was different. I'm was
sure
better.
It was. Yeah, I'm sure it did look better in a theater. No, I think part of it is the digital kind of fakery. And I mean, I think the worst part of the film, the way it looks anyway, is probably all the CGI animals, which are, I mean, they just look awful. It's hard to do a CGI animal convincingly. I don't know if you saw the Disclosure Day trailer with like the deer and stuff.
Yeah,
I'm just like,
it looks like the same one from this movie.
Oh yeah, it's awful. It's awful. And maybe there's nothing to be helped there.
But I will commend Del Toro for using CG and not being like a Christopher Nolan type. It's like everything's got to be practical. Like the scene where his creature actually gets struck by lightning and you go inside his body and his heart starts beating. Like, you don't need that. And I don't usually like those shots, but I actually kind of appreciated that one because you go through the veins and everything, and the body is like pumping blood again. And I don't know. I thought it worked in a scenario like that.
I think some of it works, yeah. For me, some of it works, but the majority of it has to do with the way the film actually looks on a screen. Yeah, that's just something that and also I'm red-green colorblind, so maybe there's something there that, I'm sure there's some movies that don't look the same to me as they do to other people, but normal people. So how familiar are you with some of like the old Universal monster films?
I haven't seen any of them.
You haven't seen a single one. Have you read Dracula? You haven't read Frankenstein, anything like that?
No.
So your understanding of Frankenstein and Nosferatu / Dracula is purely osmosis.
It's all pop cultural. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I am a blank slate.
Well, no, you're not. You had this imposed on you since you were blank slate.
Through the eyes of a babe. What's the saying? Yeah, no, I don't have like,
Did you ever watch Young Frankenstein, the Mel Brooks film?
No.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I have seen Werewolf in a Girl's Dormitory.
Oh, okay, that's a werewolf. I guess you'll be ready for Edgar's next film.
I just know when I go to pee in my house, there's a little candle in the downstairs bathroom because
my kids watch this. Listen to this.
There's a little candle that has a bunch of Halloween mascots on it, and there's a mummy with the classic like toilet paper, and there's a vampire with the big cape and the fangs, and there's Frankenstein's monster with the green skin and the bolts coming out of his head or his neck.
Right.
And there might be a pumpkin on it. And like this is where we ended up. Like all of these things are side by side. No matter what they meant, no matter where they came from, like legitimate Gothic novels with literary merit, now they're all like Halloween fodder,
That has to be because of the Universal monster films.
Oh, sure, yeah, because the commodification.
So popular in the 30s and everything, and that put an image, to the monster. It put an image to Dracula. He's a guy in a cape. He's a guy with bolts coming out of his neck, and that's just sort of what you...
Well, when you think of Frankenstein, you think of, it's alive!
Which I think is from The Bride of Frankenstein. It's not even, I think, in the original.
Yeah, I wouldn't know.
Yeah, you wouldn't know. You haven't watched it.
And I wanted to watch them before this episode, and I just...
What happened, Jeff? What are you, in a grad program?
Preparing for a week-long work trip that you got to get all your homework done before you fly to Florida? Yeah, something like that.
Hello, Sarasota.
What's going on, Prometheus? Getting
That's
on that
bingo.
Okay, we're reaching the end of Hard Ticket, but before we hit our titular question, we are going to have a residual Q&A, just the two of us. Any lingering thoughts, questions between these two movies? You've got something.
Yeah, I'm like going through my notes and I wrote something down. Okay. Is Christoph Waltz, is he Elon Musk? Is he supposed to be Elon Musk? What do you think?
He supposed to be Elon Musk?
You think he's Elon Musk in this movie? He's like bankrolling like a scientist so he can live forever.
He's a war profiteer.
Yeah.
Well. Oh, yeah. So he definitely is like believing in the singularity.
Oh, like yeah. 100%. Yeah. If you're a person who says, I'm going to conquer death or I, can't die, I have to live forever. You have to put my syphilis, mind into another body.
Right.
You are an evil person.
Yeah.
Like literally, like in a subtextual way, like thematically, you have not come to terms with your humanity, your death, your finite time on this world. That makes you an evil person in a story. So we can already say Christoph Waltz, bad dude, bad hombre. Is he supposed to be Elon Musk? He's sort of that type though, right?
Well, yeah, because he's a scumbag. He's a war profiteer. Like, I don't think you have to go any further than that. Like, I guess so.
I'm just interested in some of the political parallels because I do think that there's something a little bit in Nosferatu. I don't necessarily know if it pans out and is actually like politically correct because he's like, oh, it's this influence that came from outside of our country and,
right.
and it invaded us. And I'm like, there's a little bit of like, and that's always been a thing with Eggers where you're like, okay, he only like basically hires white people to be in his movie.
Right. But he also does a lot of time periods where it's like,
it's historically accurate.
Right.
Yeah. I think there was like a quote where he's like, the idea of like photographing a car makes me want to throw up or something. And I'm like, that's okay. I can respect that.
Yeah.
He writes what he knows. We'll say that.
He does write what he knows.
Is there any sort of political allegory though in Frankenstein to be found? There has to be something. I do like that there's going back to kind of your point about subtext. I think the captain who Victor Frankenstein is sort of sharing a story with, he's like, we have to keep going. We have to keep going to the North Pole. We have to keep pushing through the ice. And I think Victor, he says, you share my madness. Perhaps there is a finer point in me sharing my story.
He's like,
don't keep pushing. Don't keep pushing, dude. Don't keep pushing past the bounds of science and trying to conquer death, and maybe be a little more content with where you are now. You know, line go up, right? That's the thing. Line only go up. I mean, he's saying, hey, line, stay down. Just stay at a level plane.
And I wasn't even thinking about the singularity.
Yeah.
I really wasn't.
That's kind of like, I feel like that's part of it. That's definitely modern Prometheus. I mean, this is the first like science fiction story, like generally considered to be the first science fiction
that's
story.
true.
And now we are living in a time that is full of science fiction gadgets from, you know, that would have been science fiction just a couple decades ago.
That is true. I guess I was like kind of disregarding any political allegory because I know Del Toro's been trying to make this thing for forever. Like he wanted Doug Jones to play the monster, you know,
right.
the guy who plays the Fishman, his frequent collaborator. And then it was going to be Andrew Garfield, and they went through a heck of a lot of people. So I was just looking at the legacy, and I was like, is this just supposed to be timeless in the sense that its source material is? It's not. I mean, it does feel like a Netflix movie, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't even know if I would say that Frankenstein is timeless necessarily. I mean, because it does come from a specific time.
We're in a Frankenstein renaissance right now. We got The Bride coming out, and we've got like everybody's quoting Frankenstein and Prometheus in their films now.
Right. Yeah, I guess everybody's rereading it, so all the screenwriters are getting out there. I don't know. You know, Del Toro always talks about, I feel like a lot of his movies talk about fascism because of the Spanish Civil War, and Franco, all that stuff. And so you look at something like Frankenstein, which is about this guy who is trying to squash the feminine and upraise the masculine. There's a little bit of fascism in there, I think.
Yeah.
About trying to just keep pushing. You are God. You know, you are in control of life, and he thinks of himself as a creator, but really he's like a slave master, I feel like. And I think there's something there. I don't necessarily think that that's Del Toro's intent with everything, but it was just something I was kind of picking up on a little bit. So I was curious to hear your take on it.
Yeah, no, blank slate.
All right, Jeff, what other lingering questions do you have?
I just have one for you. What's your Oscar going to? If you could award one person, cast or crew, from either of these two movies, because we're going to get it back into our awards conversation. Frankenstein is up for, I believe, 9 Oscars this season, and Nosferatu was nominated for 4. So these are awards movies, and we don't know if Frankenstein is going to win anything. I kind of don't know if it will, honestly. It's been overlooked at a lot of the peripheral shows. But between the two of these movies, you get to award one person, cast or crew.
Can I award the best writing Oscar to Mary Shelley?
Not Bram Stoker?
I like Bram Stoker. I think Mary Shelley was better writer. Yeah. No, I'm just joking. That's a tough one. I think I really admire the sound in Nosferatu. I thought the sound was really great.
Me too, yeah.
The cinematography in Nosferatu, I think, is also pretty striking. It is gray as hell.
Yeah.
It's gray as hell. But I do like the way that he is composing shots. I guess that's probably Eggers doing that. But cinematography or sound, I think maybe going to Nosferatu would probably be me. What would you give an Oscar to in between these two films?
I'm going to make up a category and do the best physical performance to Lily Rose Depp, who is definitely sore on set, the way she's like contorting her body and all of those things. How'd you feel about her performance?
She's moving it crazy style for sure. Yeah. No, she's there's like half of me that's like, oh, she's pretty good. And then there's half of me that's like, well, she's just sort of like making funny faces, and I could do that, like, yeah. I sort of like look at it. I'm like, I know kids who can kind of move like that. So
yeah,
I think, no, I like the performance. I do like it. I don't want to poo-poo the son or the daughter of Johnny Depp, esteemed actor Johnny Depp, who never did anything wrong. No. We're an anti-Johnny Depp podcast.
Yeah,
I'm declaring that right now. No, she's good. I think that's a worthy Oscar.
We're a pro Lily Rose Depp.
There you go. Yeah. for the Oscar. Well, Jeff, it's the end of Hard Ticket, another classic Hard Ticket episode in the books, our second episode of the Oscar matchups. I know what your Hard Ticket's going to because you just told me before we picked up this recording again. So, but you're going to have to tell me again.
Yes. Yeah. And hey, I kind of went back and forth as much as I could in the short amount of time I had between watching the movies and recording this episode because it was a stretch, folks, but
it's like 5 hours of movies to watch.
It's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot to fit in. I woke up at 6 a.m. to watch Frankenstein this morning, and I'm still behind on everything. But I loved seeing Frankenstein in a movie. I absolutely would watch it again in a movie theater. My hard ticket is not going to Frankenstein, which is unfortunate because I think, for some reason, I feel like it's sticking with me a little bit more than Nosferatu, maybe because it's longer, maybe because honestly the cast is a little more condensed in Frankenstein and it has more of that epic feeling to it. And also my girlfriend loves it and there's Frankenstein stuff around the house. But she also loves Nosferatu, which is where my hard ticket is going. And it's where I thought it was going to go before this episode. To me, Nosferatu, and it's weird, right? It feels like a strange trajectory for Eggers' career. He was very experimental, very le film artiste at the beginning, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like he has gone into more of a conventional route. We were talking off mic about like his camera moves and how you're more conscious of artifice and the camera itself in Nosferatu than you are in any of his other movies.
It's very fluid.
Yeah, it moves through structures. I made a note when it's moving through this town that Thomas shows up at outside of Orlok's residence. They're like vampire hunters. They're all dancing around him when he walks in. And a woman dances underneath the camera. She disappears under the frame. And I'm like, that feels out of place for me in an Eggers movie. But then I was like, you know, we're having all these nightmare sequences and dreams in Nosferatu. And to me, it's almost like because Orlok is such a foreboding presence, it almost feels in scenes like this that he's like, he is watching the whole thing. Like the camera is his point of view.
Yeah, his presence is felt throughout the whole film.
Yeah, which is great. And I think what they accomplish, what Eggers accomplishes in Nosferatu and moments like that, I honestly think it might be brilliant. I'm not prepared to say that about it. It has problems. It is a little bit long in the tooth, but...
The vampire tooth.
The fang. But I do think that I like what it's saying a little bit more. I like its conversation about the natural and supernatural world and how much we really, truly, actually understand between the two. It's appropriate for a time and it's appropriate when you have a conversation about like the devil. Like imagine seeing the devil and you're just like, that might explain some things, but I'm not sure yet.
Right.
Like that's kind of what Nosferatu feels like. And I think that's really interesting. Not to say I don't like Frankenstein. I actually really enjoy both these movies. And I kind of wanted to be in the Frankenstein defending camp because I did not predict that you would choose it for your hard ticket. And now we're going to find out. Ladies and gentlemen, lean forward.
Yeah, I'm going to pick Nosferatu. Yeah.
I was right.
Yeah, you're right. I am going to go with Nosferatu. It's weird because I think I like, even though there's like, it's very didactic, there's not a lot of ambiguity. I think I like the ideas being explored in Frankenstein a little bit more. I just don't like the presentation very much. I think that's the big deal for me. It is just, it's a little just too much for me. Hard to kind of put into words. I think Nosferatu is a more pleasant looking film. That feels weird to say. That feels so weird to say because it looks like mud. But I think I enjoy that a little bit more. I like that it's sort of harkening back to that silent cinema. I have big problems with both these films.
Yeah.
Biggest problem with Nosferatu is sort of just like, what's the point? You know, what's the point? I can go watch 1922 Nosferatu anytime and it's still great. It's an amazing film.
And it saves you an hour.
And it saves me about an hour. But I don't get to hear Orlok do his little bounce on it crazy style or whatever he says.
Not until I edit Bill Skarsgård's Orlok lines into the original Nosferatu.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what we need. A YouTube poop of the original Nosferatu. Frankenstein, you know, I think I did like it a little bit more. I'll be honest. I liked it a little bit more than the first time I watched it. I think I gave it like 2 stars when I watched it originally. I was just like, it's just exactly what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
But more obvious in some ways. And that upset me. I do like that it's making some changes from the story to explore, I think, some meaningful questions, stuff that we've kind of gotten into, questions that, you know, I don't know what the resolution to some of those are. Like the whole, like, the characters in both these films, female characters who sacrifice themselves for male sins and stuff like that. I think, you know, that's something that I need to meditate on a little bit more, I feel like. But yeah, ultimately, I think I'd rather see Nosferatu in a theater to appreciate the cinematography and the sound design. I'll say it's close. I'll just say it's close. Because I think it could have been Frankenstein.
It was pretty close for me, too. Hey, this was a hard ticket.
Hey.
I will say hey. But that's going to do it for us today at Hard Ticket. This is our second episode of the Oscar lead-up. Next week, I'm just going to say it right now instead of at the end, we've got Shakespeare in Love versus Hamnet coming at you. That's going to be our last episode before the Oscars. Remember to get your ballots in if you want a chance to be on the show and to pick the matchup. We have our hands tied. If you win, there's nothing we can do about it except delete the ballot. But as always, thank you, Jared Tadlock, for designing our brand elements, keeping our podcast looking fresh. Thank you, Aaron Griffin, for mixing and mastering our theme song, sung by yours truly in a truly awful falsetto. You can follow the podcast on Instagram at Blue Sky at Hard Ticket Pod, all lowercase, all one word. You can follow me on Letterboxd at Jeff Blogus, all lowercase, all one word. Tristan.
Yeah. Dude, you're in a flow state. You're in a flow state for that one. That's insane. And I'm always just like, yeah, you can follow me. You can follow me on Instagram at Tristan__less. You can follow me on Letterboxd. Tristan Moore. That's my name.
That's it.
I think my like username on Letterboxd is like prof_physica, which I made so many years ago. Stupid name. Don't look that up. Don't look it up. What else? Oh yeah, you should email the podcast.
Email us.
hardticketpodcast@gmail.com. That's how you're going to submit your ballot, unless you happen to be in our Discord. But even then, just email it.
Yeah.
Just email it, okay?
Just use it.
So we can keep it all in one place. Use
it.
Use the friggin' email, dude. Yeah, it's not going to go to spam, trust me.
No.
Yeah, I think that's it, Jeff.
I think that's it. As always, thank you guys for listening. And until next week, we will see you at the theater.
It's a lie. It's a hard